All right, so we are going to be in Exodus chapter 14 tonight. Before we get there, I want to ask a question here. What are some of the reasons that parents tell their children to follow specific instructions or directions? What are the reasons? What are the rationale? Why do parents often tell their children to follow certain instructions or directions? What's that? So they don't get hurt? Absolutely. Absolutely. They want to keep them safe. So that's important. You got to do what I say, do it the way I tell you to do it. I want to keep you safe. I want to keep you secure. What are some other reasons?
So they don't have to, if they do it wrong, and then they have to redo it the way you told them to do it.
Okay. All right. They can, if they do it wrong, yeah, you're wasting time. You got to redo it. So do it right the first time. Do it my way.
It's a learning experience.
Okay. Learning experience. Sometimes it has to do with safety.
Teach them certain skills that they need also.
Sometimes it's a learning experience, teaching them skills that they have to acquire for the rest of their lives. Because they need to do things the way you've told them to do. They need to get it done how you've done it, how you've told them to do it.
Sometimes it just makes your life easier.
That makes your life easier.
Well, they also need to learn how to follow instructions.
Sure, gotta learn how to follow. It's not always, you know, we are not always in the driver's seat, right? There's going to be times where we need to take orders, we need to take instructions, we need to go to do that kind of thing. So absolutely, sometimes you just have to learn to take orders, follow directions, follow instructions, and the reality is, a lot of times, parents know what's best for their children. Now I know there can be some arguments. You know, we're not perfect, we make mistakes, but generally speaking, we tell our children to do certain things and we give them specific instructions. We know what's best for them. Even if, right here can be the hard thing, even if they don't know why. You know, and it may not even seem rational to them or reasonable, depending on how old the child is. Sometimes we can have adult children that we say, you're doing it wrong, do it this way, and they may or may not understand why. But all the way down to, well, I'm not going there. So children, parents and children, sometimes, but there is this concept that sometimes, I don't know if you've had this experience, but sometimes I have to tell my kids, listen, just do it because I said, right? Why do I have to do it? What's that? Yeah, because I said so. That sometimes that's the only reason you need, right? We don't always have to explain things. So sometimes our children need to follow directions and they may or may not know why. And they may even think, that doesn't sound like a good idea. That doesn't sound right. There's something wrong with that. Still need to follow it. Now, again, we're not talking about adult children and telling them to do simple things, but sometimes because I said so is what needs to happen there. All right, so we've got a lengthy reading here. We're going to be in chapter 14. There's 31 verses, and I want to give people online, I'm going to break this up into 3 readings, or just successive readings, so I'll need 2 people. If anybody online would like to read a portion of scripture, let me know. Anybody online want to read 10 verses? All right, either everybody's mute button is on.
I'll read. I was getting unmuted.
Okay, all right. Mike, what were you, 11 through 20? Mike, can you read chapter 14, 11 through 20 when it comes up?
Yes.
Okay, so Luther is going to read the first 10. Mike, you can read 11 through 20, and then I will finish us off with the 21 through 31. So let's do that.
Are you ready?
I am ready whenever you are. Go ahead.
Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel that they turn and camp before Pihirath, between Migdol and the sea, opposite Baal Zephon. You shall camp before it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say to the children of Israel, they are bewildered by the land. The wilderness has closed them in. Then I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will pursue them, and I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, and the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. Now it was told the king of Egypt that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. Also, he took 600 choice chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with boldness. So the Egyptians pursued them, all the horses and the chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his army, and overtook them camping by the sea beside Baharath before Zephon. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes and beheld the Egyptians marching after them. So they were very afraid, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord.
All right, thank you. Mike, you are up.
They said to Moses, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians, for it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. And Moses said to the people, fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they shall go in after them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, his chariots, and his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I've gotten glory over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night, without one coming near the other all night.
All right, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, made the sea dry land. And the waters were divided, and the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watched the Lord in the pillar of fire and cloud looked down on the Egyptians' forces and threw the Egyptian forces into panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. The Egyptians said, let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled into it, And the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen of all the hosts of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained, but the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians. So the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. All right. So why in verses 1 through 4 did God give Moses specific directions on where to go? Why is
He
it?
knew the riverbed.
What's that?
God knew the riverbed.
You knew the
It was
riverbeds.
smooth. It was smooth across there.
Okay, it was smooth across there. He knew where it was going to take him. Yeah,
Or that the Egyptians would think that they were.
that's right. That's right. The Egyptians would think they don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're doing, right? Remember, these are slaves. They probably have not been journeying long distances and those kinds of things. They've probably been pretty confined to areas of Egypt. So now they're going out, and the first thing that happens is, of course, Pharaoh, well, he's upset about it, but he's going to end up saying they don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're doing.
We got on track.
Yeah. And so what else is God doing with this? What is he doing to Pharaoh with all of this?
He's setting him up. He's going to use him to prove.
He's going to use him, and he's hardening his heart, right? He says, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart through all of this. So Pharaoh is going to be emboldened, and his heart is going to be hard. So how did Pharaoh react after the Israelites left Egypt? I kind of alluded to it a little bit there, but what was going on in his mind?
He decided he was sorry he let him go.
Yeah,
Kind of the same thing with every other place that they've done.
that's right. Every other plague. Can you imagine being Pharaoh, though? Seeing all these things after one after another, right? He's already gone through 10 plagues. The last plague was what? What happened with the last plague?
Son died.
His son dies, right? His firstborn child dies. You know, Pharaoh is impacted by all of this. And yet, he still even hardens his heart. It goes back to what you said. He's this is just the kind of guy he is. He keeps going back to the same kinds of things. So his heart, his mind has changed. What are some of the things that he says and that his people are kind of, what do they say?
What have we done? We've lost our servants.
Yeah, what have we done? What have we done? Oh no. Have you ever done that? I mean, just in general, right? Oh no, what have I done? Was talking with some of the folks at Panera this morning, and we were talking about buyer's remorse on occasion. You ever have that? Pay too much for something or whatever, and you get it home, maybe a day or two later, or worse, just after you can't return it, right? You're like, oh no, what have I told any of you what happened the day after we got here 3.5 years ago? All right, 3.5 years ago, I take the position here. Come in on a Wednesday night. Yeah. Come in on a Wednesday night, right? We're exhausted. We move out everything. The church comes in. They help us move or whatever. Go to sleep. I wake up the next morning and I think to myself, what have I done? What have I done? That actually was my thought. Like, what have I done? I've come down here. This is in the middle of nowhere. It's become home now, but I know that feeling, and maybe you do as well. But Pharaoh is thinking, and he's got people around him who are saying the same kinds of things, right? And the people, you ever have somebody chirping in your ear and they end up changing your mind, maybe hardening your heart by the things that they say?
Sometimes you just give in to them so they'll shut up.
Okay, you might give in to them. They're constantly yapping and you give in. But we can also have those moments where people change our minds, don't they?
I feel like Sam, just being around, like if I think something, then he thinks something, like, okay, then I'll think what he thinks, because I don't know why, but I think that goes back to the civil just show up. I don't know.
Well, sometimes there's this, people have different views, opinions, all that kind of stuff. But I know I've been around people who have been instigators. Maybe before being a Christian, maybe I wanted to take the high road. And I've had people who are friends, don't let them talk to you that way. They can't get away with that. And what happened? You can guess what happened. I changed my mind, right? And started thinking, that's right. Who are they? I'm gonna mistreat them now, whatever. So don't discount that part of what's going on is Pharaoh's got people around him too. Now his heart changes, but they basically say, what have we done? We've lost our workers. This is financial. There's a major financial burden that's going on here. And so he ends up changing his mind, but he says, he's kind of saying, what have I done? He's got buyer's remorse or those kinds of things. Now, how did the Israelites feel when they saw the Egyptians coming out? They saw the army. How did they feel, and what did they say to Moses?
They were afraid.
You think they were afraid?
I would have been afraid. Yeah, they were terrified.
Yeah, they were terrified. They were, I would say, maybe a little bit more than just afraid. Yeah, they were terrified. They were greatly feared.
I think this is interesting that it said, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that we had to come out here to die? That just seems like a weird.
Yeah, they're wondering why Moses let them out into this wilderness area to die. And the issue is, you should have just left us alone in Egypt. We could have died happy there. And this is going to come up over and over again. They're basically saying, what are they saying with those words?
But they wish they hadn't come.
Yeah, wish I hadn't come. It's better in slavery. It's better in Egypt. Egypt was better than this. You brought us out here to die. We could have done that back in Egypt where we were. Now, did the Israelites ever experience something like this before? Did they ever feel more stress, more hardship when God got involved in the past? Had they experienced something like this before? God gets involved.
Are you talking about this particular group?
This group.
Israelites or all
This group. No, this group.
Okay.
Has this group.
Well, I mean, they went through their cattle dying and
They did.
the early plagues, they experienced.
They went through some of the early stuff. Yeah. What happened when Moses goes first to Pharaoh? Does anybody remember chapter 5?
They doubled their workload.
They doubled their workload. God got involved, said, let my people go through Moses and Aaron, right? And they got even more hardship on top of it. Things didn't get better right away. They didn't get easier right away. They actually got harder when God gets involved. Their lives were made harder. And they complained that they should have been left alone. They complained a very similar complaint back then. Why have you come here? You're just making our life more miserable. And it wasn't Moses really that was doing it. They're complaining against God. God, you're making our lives more miserable. Moses is here and things are not getting better. So there's a similar thing that's happening here. But in some ways, they've already experienced God coming in, and the first initial thing God does is to get them in more trouble. They would see that as. But then there's these plagues that happen, and over time, they're excluded. They're seeing the power of God. They finally get brought out. But now they come up against some hardship. They actually are not actually experiencing any hardship right now, are they?
Just fear.
Their fear over what they think is going to happen. They're not actually being slaughtered, are they?
Yeah.
No, they see it from a distance, so it looks bad. Ever look bad in your life? Sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I can kind of envision the future and it's a horrible train wreck, right? Sometimes I run these things in my mind. You know, aliens are going to pick me up in my backyard. They're going to take me away. They're going to do experiments on me, and then I'm going to die. So, right, things that are just outlandish. Never going to happen. I don't believe in aliens. But it's just that thing where we can let our minds run and wander or whatever. These people had, and yes, there's a real threat out there, but they're not being persecuted. They're not being slaughtered. God had already brought them out. He'd done these miracles, and yet they're having a hard time doing what? Yeah, having a hard time trusting God that he is going to do what he said he would do. There might be a lesson there for us as well. Sometimes we might get into similar situations. So how did Moses respond when the Egyptians were bearing down on the Israelites?
Told them to stand firm.
Yeah, stand firm. You're gonna stand firm. You're going to fight. God is going to fight for them. If God fights for you, are you assured to win? Is victory assured? Yeah. Paul says, if God is for us, who could be against us? Like, what's the worst they can do to us, right? They send us home to glory is the worst thing that could ever happen. We go off to be with God and Christ and the Spirit. We go off to be in a place with no suffering, no pain, no sin, no sadness. You know what I mean? Like, that's the worst they could do to us, kind of thing. If God is for us, who can be against us? So Moses, yeah, what's the downside, right? So, you know, Moses says you need to stand firm, and God is going to fight for you. Now, had God fought for them in the past? Yeah, the answer is yes, because they just came out of Egypt, right? Now, do they tend to have a short-term memory? Do they? Yeah, they're forgetting what just happened. Can we have short-term memory loss when it comes to God?
Trying to live in the moment. This is what's happening to you right now.
Yeah, and that's what they're experiencing.
Focus on.
Yeah, sure. And it's not to say that there might not be threats out there, that things are, you know, they're not making up that the Egyptians are out there. Sure, there is a threat out there, but they're not in the midst of any suffering at the moment. It's just this looming threat. But God says, trust and obey. I like, he says basically be quiet. You could put it in maybe shut up. You know, I don't know if that's really what's going on there, but I kind of get that picture, right? He says, be silent, but I kind of think, just stand there with your mouth closed, okay? God's going to take care of some stuff here. Just sometimes just got to shut up. So God had rescued them. He brought them out of the land of Egypt. Now, what miraculous event took place at the Red Sea?
Parted.
Yeah, parted. And what are they able to do?
Walk across on dry ground.
Yeah, walk across there. Is it hard to follow God's directions sometimes, even when we know what's good, that it's good for us?
Well, I have problems with it all the time. I don't know what the rest is.
The next question is, why do you think that is?
Lack of faith.
A lack of faith? Yeah, it can be a lack of faith.
Well, and I think again, we're focused on what's happening to us right now. We're not allowing the whole bigger picture.
Yeah.
Or to kind of see why this might be happening or what's ahead for us. It's just that we know that right now, this is the moment that I'm in, and this is what I'm feeling and how, you know.
And again, it's not to take away any of the reality, right? I mean, we do go through periods of suffering, not just imaginary suffering, or not just we see something coming, but we can be in the midst of suffering. That's a reality. That's true. God doesn't shelter us from that. But through all of that, he says, I'm going to be with you. You will make it through one way or the other. We're going through this together. We're not left alone. You're not left alone in this. So, but fear can often get a hold of us, right? In the moment, but also fear can kind of grip us and either keep us from doing something or make us do things that would show us to be kind of like the Israelites, cowering, like it would be better if I hadn't come this direction.
And I think sometimes it's hard we're very time conscious,
Sure.
and when you're praying for something and you pray and you pray and you pray and you pray and it just doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Yeah.
I think I sometimes have a tendency to feel a little bit helpless and give up and think, I'm asking, why aren't you helping? About your test, and you're failing your test.
Yeah, there's issues that are related to that. And it is a struggle, isn't it? I mean, it's real. We remember that Paul asked God to pray. He prayed 3 times for something specific. And God simply said, nope, my grace is sufficient for you. I think we have a hard time with that too, because we ask God for something and maybe it's something really good. It's not bad. It's good. This is good. And he doesn't give it to us in the timing that we want, or the answer is no. I mean, I can't believe that what Paul asked for about removing the thorn in the flesh was a bad thing, but God simply said, no, we're going to walk through this together. And my power is going to be seen and manifest in your weakness as you rely on me over and over again. As tough as it is, who do the Israelites need to rely on? Can they fight this battle? If the Egyptians come and God leaves them, can they fight this battle all on their own? No. But if God is with them, who can be against them? God says, I'm going to take care of this. It's not going to be pleasant all the time, but he's going to take care of it. So we can definitely grow. And even if we've been Christians for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it happens to be, we can all still grow, right? We all maybe have those moments of wavering faith. Wavering faith. You ever think about John the Baptist? Great man of faith, right? Great man of God, proclaiming Jesus is the Christ. He's the Son of God. He's the Lamb of God, takes away the sins of the world, right? He ends up in prison. He questions. Now, some people try to excuse John, and the arguments that come up are very strange. John specifically says, go and ask him. Is he the one to come, or are we waiting for someone else? And Jesus says to the disciples, go back and tell John all the things you're seeing. So
he was facing death.
He was facing a lot of stuff.
Assure me.
Listen, Elijah had a nervous breakdown. Men and women of God, even great ones, have had moments of testing, of trials, of sufferings, and even of wavering faith. They didn't lose their faith, but they struggled, they questioned, they doubted, they wondered, what's going on? Why are you doing this? So if you ever find yourself in that situation, I'm not saying that's the best place to be. What I'm saying is that you're in good company. The prophets of God have found themselves in those situations at times as well. All right. Even Jesus in the garden, right?
He said, my God, why have you forsaken me?
That's true. There is a discussion about what he means there. But yeah, some people would say that. I would look at the garden. He struggles in the garden to say, if there's a different way, take this cup from me. I'd rather go a different way. But, he's ultimately going to say whatever your will is. All right.
It's kind of like we said a while ago. I don't mind dying, but I don't mind being dead, but
the process of dying, right? Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the process of dying, right? Right. All right. So here's the homework question, something for you to think about, ponder, don't answer, but take it home with you. What benefits can you see or foresee in following God's directions? What are the benefits that you can see by following God's directions, even when it doesn't look like he knows what he's talking about, even when it looks hard, what are the benefits? So take that home, think about that in light of what we see here in this text. All right, anybody got any last thoughts, comments, questions?